Today on Inside Utah Politics, the race for governor. Another candidate has officially jumped in. Jeff Birmingham is here to talk about why he wants the job and where he stands on some of the big issues of the day. Plus, the legislature is considering some big changes to the state's medical marijuana law. We'll take a look at the potential modifications ahead of the special session.
Time now for Inside Utah Politics.
Good Sunday morning, and thanks so much for joining us. I'm Glenn Mills. It is time to go inside Utah politics, and we begin with Republican candidate for governor, Jeff Birmingham. Jeff, welcome to Inside Utah Politics. Glad to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me, Glenn.
You launched during the week. We covered that the day you launched. Talk about your background. What have you done that you believe qualifies you for this position?
Yeah, I've been an entrepreneur since very early on. Started my first business actually as a 13-year-old, but have been here in Utah creating jobs for the last decade, created over 4,000 jobs. I think it's time for an innovative outsider here in Utah, a job-creating entrepreneur with a smart plan for the growth that we're experiencing as a state.
That is clearly a message you want to get across, an innovative outsider and job creator. What do you mean by that specifically?
Yeah, we need to change the very way that government thinks. I mean, it's crazy, Glenn. We're on the verge of driverless cars in the private sector. You have to take a half day off work, so do I, to go renew our driver's license at the DMV. That does not make sense. We need to change the very way government thinks. It's not just about systems and technology, although that's part of it. It's about the hearts and minds of those that work within government, being innovative, able to serve a taxpayer the way that we expect nowadays.
And do you believe that that ability is there right now and the government is just slow to change to it?
I think that's really hard to change from the inside. I mean, politicians are enablers of the systems that have created them, while entrepreneurs are disruptors of the status quo and create opportunity for all.
Talk more about the businesses you were in. You talked about creating nearly 4,000 jobs. In what industries, and how did you get those businesses going?
Yeah, I started my first technology company as an undergrad at a university here in Utah. Sold that to a NASDAQ-listed firm when I was 25. Spun the proceeds of that into real estate, invested through the Great Recession and on, so real estate private equity. And then once the real estate was humming, we set up Utah County's first institutional venture fund. So most of the growth, most of the companies in Silicon Slopes at the point of the mountain, our firm was the first investor in.
You've been involved in politics on some level, but you haven't run for office. Why start with governor?
Yeah, I've been actively involved in politics throughout my career. I've been a precinct chair. I've raised a lot of money for Republican candidates, but have never run for political office. We are at a critical juncture right now in Utah. We need game-changing leadership, in my opinion, and that will come from an outsider. So now is the time, and I think it's an important time, so that's why now.
Some might look at that, though, and say, I might be a little concerned of a lack of institutional knowledge. Your response to that?
Government is broken. Why do we want institutional knowledge of something that is broken? We see that on a federal level, and I think everyone agrees with that. The state government is better, of course, here, and we are all grateful for that. It's still broken. Again, the DMV. We don't need to stand in a line for 4 hours at the DMV to renew our driver's license. We can do better, but we need an innovative outsider with a track record of success to come in and to change up the status quo. That is my conviction. And I think that message resonates with Utahns. I mean, the response since the launch has been incredible, and we're excited about that.
So you mentioned the DMV as one area. What are some other areas that really stick out to you that need to be reworked and, as you say, fixed?
Again, it's about the way that government thinks. So there are several ways. One thing that comes to mind, we need to modernize our education system. We're in an industrial age education system. We have my wife and I have 3 children in public schools right now. My wife, Sally, was a second grade school teacher. We need to modernize education. There is a mismatch between what our children are learning and the new economy that they're graduating into. It's not the industrial age, it's the information age. We need to match up what they're learning with jobs that actually exist and are coming. I was just at a college campus earlier.
Yeah, give us an example of what you mean by that. What would you like to see change?
There are a bunch of boot camps, technology boot camps that have set up, like Dev Mountain, and you see billboards all along I-15. Come learn coding and then get a job. They're taking advantage of a gap in the market. There is a gap in the market. We have a shortage of 5,000 tech workers along the Wasatch Front. There is a shortage of skilled construction workers. There's no reason that we can't bring some of that boot camp mentality into high school so that our children are learning the skills that are actually needed as they get out. Like a public-private partnership, that can happen, but it takes an innovative outsider to bring that kind of thinking to government.
And in that situation, should someone be work ready by the time they graduate from high school, say? There's a lot of, the reason I bring that up is because there's a lot of talk of, hey, maybe we need to get away from this 4-year degree thinking and get into some trades, learn a skill, and be ready to work as soon as we get out of high school.
What I think we need to get away from is thinking that the 4-year degree is the only option or the best option. I think there's a culture in the state that it's like, if you haven't gotten your 4-year degree, you're somehow a failure or have failed in some sense. That is absolutely not the case. We love our children in Utah, and there are many ways to learn the skills, not just a 4-year degree. The value of a 4-year degree decreases every day right now. It becomes more important what you know. The world is becoming more entrepreneurial. So we can't think linearly. We can't think in a linear fashion. We need to think of exponential growth, and our children need to think creatively as well.
Okay, I want to get into some issues that if you are the governor, you would be faced with, some big issues of the day. The first, school funding. You know well that we are last in the nation. Is that acceptable? And where do you go from there if you are elected governor?
Yeah, that's not acceptable. I don't know why we'd want to be last in the nation in that. We love our children, Glenn. Again, there is latent potential to change that, I think. There is potential to change that. We need an innovative outsider with fresh ideas, a fresh perspective.
So what would be one of your ideas to change that?
Our public lands are very interesting, right? We have lands that have been set apart in trust for the funding of education. If we have a strong federal delegation, a strong governor, there are opportunities to create increased funding for education, in my opinion, that would not cost taxpayers more money.
Tax reform, a big issue in our state right now. Where do you stand on the conversation that we're having there? Do we need to reform the system?
Look, we do not have a revenue problem in the state, Glenn. A revenue has been up and to the right. Our entrepreneurs and the people of this great state have made sure that we do not have a revenue problem. We may have a spending problem. We may have a government growth problem. In fact, government has grown over 30%, state government, in the last 5 years. And my question to you and to all of Utah, are we better served? 30% better served? So, to get to your answer, we do not have a revenue problem. We may have a silo issue that we need to address. There are a lot better ways to address that than a tax on services. I am not for a tax on services. I am not for increased taxes.
Are you open to changing the Constitution for the income tax and the school requirement?
I am open to creative ideas that serve the people.
Okay. Abortion, a big issue across the country. This year, the state passed an 18-week abortion ban, knowing it was going to end up in the courts, which it has right now. If you were governor, would you have signed that bill?
I'm pro-life. This is a pro-life state, and I believe in federalism. I believe that states should have the ability to create laws that best serve the people in the state.
So you would sign that bill if you were governor?
If it was the will of the people, yes.
And do you think it needs to be taken further than that, 18 weeks?
No.
Like what we're seeing elsewhere?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead and finish.
No, I was going to say that we are a pro-life state.
Okay.
And this is something, we need to do all that we can to protect the unborn. That's something that's important to us here in Utah, something that's important to me.
Okay, we have 30 seconds. I want to get into public lands. You already mentioned it could be a source of school funding, but do you support the Bears Ears and Grand Staircase Escalante reductions we saw from the Trump administration?
I think that the people that are closest to the lands know how to manage them best. I've traveled all around the state to all 29 counties. Rural Utah needs a fighter in their corner. I intend to be that fighter for rural Utah.
All right, we're going to have to wrap it up on that note. Thanks for joining us, and we will follow along the campaign. Appreciate having you here.
Yeah.
Still to come, the state legislature is being called into special session tomorrow. Our panel breaks down what we can expect. But first, the Trump administration takes aim at flavored vaping products, what the president has in mind when we come back. A new bill will change the way Utah patients get their hands on medical cannabis, but exactly what that change will look like was up for debate yet again this week. Ahead of the special session, the sponsor, Senator Evan Vickers, presented it to the Health and Human Services Interim Committee. Changes are coming to the bill the legislature passed to replace Proposition 2.
Like any piece of legislation, we've learned a lot more, there's been a lot more input, and while we were very concerned about and opposed to this idea up front, we've let it play out, we've seen it run into problems, and so now we're going to take care of those problems.
That idea was a state central fill proposal, which would have required government employees to be part of the distribution process. The new bill will eliminate that in favor of 12 privately owned dispensaries. It will also address protections for patients, local government regulation, increase the legal amount patients can possess, and more. Nate Kazarian lost his wife to cancer, but says medical cannabis greatly improved her life down the final stretch. He says the modifications are desperately needed.
I think it's a dumpster fire. That's the only thing I can call HB 3001 because they have completely cut out patients.
But others say a deal is a deal. Gail Ruzicka with the Utah Eagle Forum says the central fill was crucial to the compromise.
We were told because there was a compromise, and the compromise was going to be a lot better than Prop 2, and would we please back off? Based on the people that asked us to back off, we did exactly that.
Patient advocates say it just isn't going to work and you can't force it. Christine Stenquist with Truce says it needs even more modifications.
It still has a lot of hurdles to go through. We still are seeing a very convoluted program. There's a lot of hoop jumping, and so I'm still very concerned about what we're seeing today.
Stenquist and other patients say their voices have been silenced. Connor Boyack with the Libertas Institute has been heavily involved in the negotiations. He says patients have been involved.
You probably aren't going to include patients that have been firing a machine gun at you politically to be part of that conversation, but we've had input from dozens and dozens of patients.
The bill does remain a work in progress and could undergo even more changes before the special session tomorrow. One amendment we know will be introduced would increase that 12 dispensaries to 20. President Trump announces his administration is working on new rules to stop the sale of flavored vaping products. The Health and Human Services Secretary tells Washington correspondent Jesse Tenor they could be in place in a few weeks.
People are dying with vaping, so we're looking at it very closely.
The Trump administration is taking on the e-cigarette industry after the outbreak of vaping-related illness resulting in at least 6 deaths. The president, alongside Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar, announced he plans to ban flavored e-cigarette products.
The Obama administration had allowed them to be on the market, even though they technically, under law, have to come in and get FDA approval.
Azar says in about 2 months, companies will have to remove flavored vaping products from store shelves. To get back in front of customers, they will have to apply for FDA approval.
It has to be in the public health interest for us to approve it to be on the market.
Getting approval may be difficult because Azar says vaping among teenagers is already at an all-time high.
We're not going to let this generation become the one that flips us back to growing utilization of cigarettes.
E-cigarette companies agree they should only be used by adults. But in a statement, the American Vaping Association said destroying thousands of small businesses and sending ex-smokers back to smoking will do nothing to stop drug dealers from selling contaminated THC cartridges. Secretary Azar acknowledged companies may try to block the rules with a lawsuit.
If they do, they do. But what's important is we're here protecting the public health based on science, evidence, and acting completely in conformity with the law.
In Washington, I'm Jesse Tenor.
Still to come, the Utah Supreme Court upholds partisan school board elections. But is it good policy? Our panel weighs in after the break.
You're watching Inside Utah Politics.
Time now for a closer look at some of the big stories of the week with the Inside Utah Politics panel. This week we have State Senator Karen Main and State Representative Steve Handy. Great to have both of you on the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Happy to be here.
Thank you for inviting us.
So it just so happens the two of you will be at the Capitol tomorrow for a special session, so let's dig into that a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's start with the medical cannabis modifications. Senator Main, let's start with you. This has really been a work in progress, and we're seeing more changes being made here. What do you make of it?
What I make of it is, as a Democrat, you know how we voted. We wanted the will of the people, but as time has gone on, they've crafted it to make it better for our citizens, and that's the goal. We want to make sure whatever they do, whatever they fashion, to make sure that our citizens can get what they need. And I think this is a step forward that way. We need to take care of them and give them the supply they need.
Representative Handy, let's bring you in. The central fill was kind of a big component of this compromise.
Yes, it was.
That's what you and your colleagues talked about.
Right.
Gail Ruzicka of the Eagle Forum got up in committee and said, "Look, we backed off because a deal is a deal, and this is how it was said it was going to happen."
Right.
So, what do you make of that?
Well, as a senator, upon further consideration, it's very, very complicated. So, from the governor's office and the treasurer's office, transactionally, they felt like, that it would work. But upon further consideration and months of reviewing, it's going to be very difficult. And also, that with the central pharmacy, that has to do with everything. And then you have also these issues with the district attorney in Salt Lake County and my attorney in Davis County telling their local health departments, we don't think that we're not going to let you be dispensing this. Yeah. So it just has gotten very complicated. But I want to say too, I voted in favor of every one of these bills that have come forward. I believe that people should have access to medical cannabis. We want to do it in a safe and responsible way.
To your point, Senator Main, is this a situation, because these changes do get it closer to Prop 2.
Yeah.
Not quite, but still kind of taking
Right.
steps toward that. So to your point, should the legislature have just left it be in the first place?
I think it's we told you so, and I think that the things that have happened, they've had to fix it as they've gone on. But saying that, we want to make sure, again, that everyone has the services they need. And they've had all these problems, and they fixed, and that's okay. We can't go back, but we need to look forward, because all of our citizens, they need these medications, and whatever they need to do, I support to make that happen. And so we're one road to the journey to make sure that our citizens get what they need.
How is that "I told you so" received?
Look, it is extremely complicated. Any bill like this, and you have to think of Prop 2 like a bill, but any bill that comes in front of us, there are always going to be changes. And I think going forward in the future, there will be multiple changes as we learn things with the medical cannabis law. And so it's just an opportunity to make changes, and because what we're trying to do is that we're trying to protect the public. We don't want dispensaries to be storefronts for drug dealers, but what we want to do is have it in a responsible way that pharmacists are dispensing, that it's properly dosed, and to get it to the people who need it.
Okay, and a pharmacist will still be required to be on hand in this new bill.
That's my understanding.
Yes. And I think you both hit on an important point there. This will probably change even after the special session as we continue to implement this. Let's start with you on this one, Representative Handy. Tell us about the census situation you'll be dealing with.
Yeah, there's another one of the 6 or 7 items that we'll have Monday night. One of them will be that we'll make an appropriation of $1 million to the census effort, and this was talked about in the session of 2019. But when you get into executive appropriations, they decided that that it hadn't risen to the level of that it needed to be appropriated. But again, with further consideration, this will be mainly to promote, to get people. We want an accurate census. We want everyone to participate. This will get the word out. This is critical. This is important.
And this is a bipartisan effort.
Well, yes, I sit on executive appropriations,
there you go.
And I had a different view of that.
Yeah, sure, you
we
did.
need to fund that.
Let's hear your view.
Well, we need to fund it appropriately, and it wasn't before. Now we're going back. As in my Senate district, West Valley is 31% minority. We want to make sure that we open the doors to everyone. Yeah. We want everybody to be comfortable. If we're not counted correctly, the cities and towns, they don't get the monies they need. And I want, and I hope that all the citizens recognize that. It's not that we're probing, it's that we need a correct count so the funding can be appropriate for all the areas.
All right, obviously the big issue around there, the citizenship question as well.
Yeah.
We're talking a full count is what you would like to see of people living within our boundaries, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
For the same reasons?
Yeah, those are good reasons. I subscribe to that.
Okay, a very important decision coming down from the Utah Supreme Court on partisan school board elections, basically saying upholding the constitutionality of that. Senator Main, your thoughts on that?
I think it's terrible.
Why?
I think that when education is different than everything else, and we try to keep it nonpartisan. We have many fine people that maybe don't belong to a party that really are skilled in education. They need to not have to choose a party to run. I think that they should stand on their own, and I am very suspicious and uncomfortable when people run on a party that we put to make educational decisions, not political decisions. They're there for educational. And I think as time goes on, I'm fearful of those who have the most money, those that have political aspirations one way or the other will use that, and this is not what it's for. We elect them to make those educational decisions for us collectively.
Okay, Representative Handy, your thoughts on that?
Yes. Look, there are two issues here. I think the Supreme Court absolutely made the right decision. It was unanimous that these school board people, that the state school board were not employees. Even though they get a few benefits, they're not employees. But I also agree with my good colleague here. I didn't vote in favor of this bill in 2016. It was 50 to 23 in the House, with a couple abstaining or off the floor, and I voted opposed. I just don't think that we need to go down this route. It's going to be very interesting in the years to come. I think that we don't have the governor directly involved in education in the state on the state school board is wrong. I think somebody's got to do a big lift someday to fix that. But I'm not comfortable with this. We're going to have to see what we learn.
So what is the argument on the other side, though?
The argument on the other side is that if you go through the political process, that particularly for the state school board, that people will know who they are, because it is true. Most people don't know who their state school board representative is. We know who our local school board members are in particular, but the state school board we really don't know. A lot of people don't know who they are. So it gives them more identity, more of an opportunity to be vetted.
Okay, let's get to the race for governor. Okay. Jeff Burningham jumping in this week. How does that change the race, if at all?
Why not? The more the merrier. And I think it's, I'm just sitting back and watching how it goes. Lieutenant Governor has been in for a long time, so I think he's the one that's put a lot of energy in this.
Yeah, right.
But there's a lot of fine people that are running.
That's
so
right.
As a Democrat, it's great. The more the merrier. Yeah. And so when they hone that down, whoever they want, then we'll come to the other side and say, this is our candidate for that. But it's kind of fun to watch, So sometimes when you're not the minority, it's just kind of fun to throw rocks,
Get the popcorn and watch and see what happens.
There you go.
This could be a crowded field by the time it's all
Could be a
said
crowded
and
field. I want to say something on Mr. Burningham. I don't know him, but he's a political newcomer, but he's obviously he can self-fund himself.
Right.
I got a big mailer at my house the other day, and that's pretty incredible. He reminds me of Mike Leavitt. Even though Mike Leavitt was known in the inner circle, he didn't have a name ID, wasn't well known, even though his dad had been a state senator from Cedar City and so forth. But he got traction and name ID and became a very, very pretty good, darn good governor. So we'll see.
I didn't get one in the mail. I probably should have. They missed
yours
me.
Is in the mail,
right? It's in the mail right now.
Correct.
All right.
Hey, I got one.
Yep. All right. Great conversation. Thanks so much for being with us.
We appreciate
it. All right.
Thank you.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with more Inside Utah Politics right after the break. We leave you now with a look at what's on the radar in the world of politics. The general election is coming up. Mail-in ballots will start to go out the week of October 15th. In-person early voting begins Tuesday, October 22nd. Then Election Day is Tuesday, November 5th. Make sure to connect with me on social media. I'd like to know what you think of this show and other issues that are important to you. You can email me at InsideUtahPolitics@abc4.com. You can follow me on Facebook and Twitter as well. Just log on and search Glenn Mills, ABC4. Thanks so much for making us part of your Sunday morning. We hope to see you again next week as we go inside Utah politics.